Hello everyone and welcome to Driver's Therapy. In today's video, we're going to be talking about suspension in relation to the Acura NSX. We're going to be talking about the OEM suspension, and we're going to be talking about what some people would say the stage 1 upgrade suspension. So the crazy part is that it took me some investigative journalism type of research to find out about information about the NSX. And it makes sense though, because if you think about the internet back in the days in the 1991 era, there wasn't a lot of information being archived. So a lot of the information that was put out there was either in pamphlets, press releases, or in magazines. So it's kind of hard to dig up some information, but a lot of people that I asked helped me out, and I'm gonna credit those people and give them a shout out. But this is gonna be really neat because all you guys who own an NSX should really know this stuff, because it's just really good to know in general, just to improve your suspension knowledge as well. All right, let's get started. All right, before we start, I will be reading from my phone because a lot of this stuff I just can't remember, but we've got the data and it's good data. So we're gonna be reading it from the phone. On top of that, I really want you guys to take a moment and remember that the NSX was breaking a lot of, I wouldn't say barriers, but accomplishments at its time with its aluminum body parts and the way that it was designed. Well, the suspension was also ahead of its time and had a very unique design to it. And we're gonna go into that right now. So first off, we're gonna talk about the shocks. The crazy thing is that if you try looking on the internet, if the OEM shocks are either twin tube or monotube, good luck. It is almost Area 51 level of information. As a matter of fact, if you go to the service manual and you do Control F and you put in shocks, only 3 results come up. And I think one of those doesn't even have anything to do with the suspension. They don't really tell you anything about the dampening configuration or specification in the service manual at all. So I want to make sure we clarify that. But in 1990, I found a Honda press release giving the most detailed information about the OEM shocks that you will ever find. So this is it. This is all pretty much you will get. All right, here we go. The shock absorbers are gas-filled and feature a newly designed HPV piston and bottom valve, which opens progressively under vertical loads. The progressive opening of this valve produces a more favorable dampening profile and more precise dampening control than a conventional valve system in which the fluid controls orifices are either fully open or closed. So when you read that, it's a little bit confusing. And I read that and I was excited because, all right, they're talking about, how the fluid is being controlled within the dampening force, and we'll go a little further how shocks work. But they still didn't answer the question if it's a twin tube or monotube. However, I'm assuming it's a French word, I don't know. Anyways, the reason why it matters is because a twin tube versus a monotube shock is a big difference. Just to cut to the chase and not beat around the bush, a twin tube is usually like an economical, pretty much does best at everything, but isn't the best at the one thing, performance, where monotube is better in performance. And the reason why is because you get aeration, which I'm probably butchering that word, and cavitation of the fluid inside, and it reduces the ability to continuously dampen over a high performance application or high performance environment. It also is not as resistant to heat, and just resistant to a high load, high impact environment. So long story short, a monotube shock is definitely a lot better and a lot, they're just used for most sports applications out there. But after doing some research, it was kind of weird. I'm not going to say the name, but I had somebody message me and say, hey, I have a friend literally works at Honda and he answered the question, but he doesn't want to be named. And I'm like, why? But okay, I'm just grateful for the information. Twin tube. And the reason why they went with the twin tube, the individual told me, was because Honda was trying to get a shock that would last about 100,000 miles. They were really trying to make a statement versus like Ferraris that break down all the time, that Honda longevity. So instead of using a monotube design, the OEM Acura NSX is a twin tube design. So I am not a huge suspension engineer or guru, but it looks like the Honda engineers really had something in mind when they chose the twin tube shock design. And the reason why I say that is when I read this paragraph here in the NSX Press, it all tied in. So it says, the solution adopted for the NSX was not to over-control wheel motion with excessive spring force and hard bushings, but rather to design in a beneficial amount of toe change and deflection, which would enhance handling and precision. A key element to accomplishing this was the development of a compliance pivot. And they go on talking about how this pivot changes the geometry and the deflection and everything. But it seems like they had everything in mind, that everything was supposed to work together like a Swiss watch. So that's it, guys. It is a twin tube. It has been verified. As a matter of fact, the original company that was building the twin tubes were Showa, S-H-O-W-A. It's kind of a funky name, but they were actually building the twin tube designs. Here's another crazy bit of information that you will find fun. The almighty NSX-R, right? The ultimate NSX-R twin tube design, also built by Showa. So that must tell you something, that they were using a twin tube design. Of course, they were probably really making sure that it was a good design, and they were putting that fancy, remember that fancy thing that we just read from their press release, the HPV piston and bottom valve. Let me tell you, when I tried to Google HPV piston with shocks, Google was being nasty. They didn't show me anything about shocks. They were just like HPV. I'm like, stop it. So anyways, now you guys know it's a twin tube. So let's talk about the spring rates. All right. Real quickly, guys, and the reason why I'm rushing now is because this video is gonna be long, but I love it. All right, the springs were what they called a kind of a progressive. So the springs are straight rate, which maybe they're not progressive, with an extended rubber bump stop, which acts as a progressive spring element at the limit of the to limit wheel travel. So they were not progressive, they were straight rate with, I guess, the bump stop acting like progressive. Okay, anyways. Here's the crazy part, guys. This is a Comptech spring, and I'm gonna blow your mind here in a second. The original spring rates for the Acura NSX were 170 pounds in the front and 220 pounds in the rear. This Comptech spring rate is 1,000 pounds of spring rate. Why? I don't know. These are for sale, by the way. If you want to buy them, my friend Jasser gave them to me. If you want to buy some old school awesome Comptech springs, please buy them for me. Anyways, going back to our video, guys, now you know about the OEM suspension. Now you know that the myth or the biggest mystery, twin tube design, even the NSX was twin tube. Now let's talk about stage 1 upgrades. Here it is, guys. I'm gonna call this stage 1 upgrades. Of course, stage 2 is gonna be KW. Stage 3 is, well, I don't know, it's flying. We're gonna stop at stage 2, right? So here's the crazy part. Bilstein was equally a pain in the butt with trying to figure out if it's a monotube or if it's a twin tube. They don't label it. Your fancy information here is in German. And guess what? They don't even take the time to translate it. And I'm not going to screenshot it and translate it. So after some extensive research and blah, 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 long story short, cross-referencing numbers, emailing Bilstein, looking at different people who are selling this. This is supposedly a monotube design, right? Pretty cool, right? But there's some controversy to this monotube design, and this is where things get interesting. All right, guys, so here is the information that's gonna blow your mind. But we're gonna pause here because I spent hours researching for you guys. So take a moment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything. It supports me. You don't have to be angry or jealous. I'm fat. You guys are hot. You guys are amazing. You guys are better than me. Hit the subscribe button. But let's go ahead and start telling you the crazy information I found. All right. I'm going to quote the username. It doesn't say his full name, doesn't say his last name. It's very ambiguous. I don't even know if that's a word. His name is Green Beret. Sooty name. So this guy had Bilstein shocks. He wanted to revalve them. If you don't know what that means, you should probably watch a video about that. Anyways, essentially, they're going to go inside the shock and do some fancy stuff to change the specificationing and the dampening and all that, right? But check this out. I'm gonna read it. It's gonna be horrible, but you're gonna get it. Yeah, I had the Bilsteins revalved to 91 specs, and the work was carried out by Bilstein, Austria. I wanted to have Bilstein revalve them at their German headquarters, but they said that the quality would be the same and turnaround would be quicker if they were revalved in Austria. In retrospect, it was good to have the work carried out close to home in order to personally meet the guy who did the revalving. And he names the guy, and it's in German, so it's probably going to be Volkswagen. Bilstein was not thrilled about revalving their shocks to emulate OEM shocks. I want you guys to really listen to that. Bilstein was not happy about revalving it to the OEM specifications. They said their engineers had developed the shock absorbers characteristic on a Nürburgring to improve both handling and the ride of the NSX. Okay, what's funny is that in our hidden paperwork here, it says Nürburgring. It says a lot of Nürburgring in here. That's all I could understand, right? After hearing that Honda's ex-Formula One engineers supposedly did 30,000 miles of testing on a Nürburgring on the OEM shocks, and with the input from Ayrton Senna that it was too soft, in order to develop the OEM I added that part, that wasn't in there by the way. So let me go back here and read that, how he said it, because I'm getting too excited here. After hearing that Honda's ex-Formula One engineers supposedly did 30,000 kilometers of testing on Nürburgring with input from Ayrton Senna in order to develop the OEM dampeners, Bilstein took the OEM specs more seriously. As you have already mentioned, Bilstein reiterated that their NSX shocks, which are soft at low dampening velocities, will give a plusher ride than OEM over small bumps at the expense of turn-in sharpness. They also says that since the front dampeners are stiffer than the OEM at high velocities, oversteer will decrease, understeer increase compared to OEM. And I agree, the shocks should come with specs. Even back in 2006 when he wrote this, you still couldn't find specs about shocks. So as you could see, OEM suspension had 30,000 miles on a Nürburgring of testing, and with the input of Ayrton Senna, which of course he just said it was soft and people took it more serious, versus, I'm pretty sure they didn't spend 30,000 miles on this, right? I'm sure this is good, but that was probably the most interesting thing that I heard. Now, one great thing about this shock is that it feels great. You're not going to really find a lot of replacements for the OEM shocks. And not only that, these work well with aftermarket springs. I'm not sure about 1,000-pound ones, but also this has like a little fancy thing where you could add an extra drop to it, which is pretty cool. But if you're a serious track nut like Richard Graves, then you probably would want to know the information I just said, because oversteer and understeer is a pretty important thing if you're racing around a track instead of going to Cars and Coffee. Well guys, on that note, I am keeping my car stock. So if you want to buy some shocks, you can buy these as well. Let me know. You can email me, don't comment, email me. All right guys, I hope you learned something. This was exciting. I spent all day researching it, and I do want to give people shout outs real quick. I'm not going to say their full name just because, you know, give me a quick second because I got to pull it up now. I'm over here like grandma, like, wait up. All right, big shout out to Cloud, and big shout out to Paul. You know who you are. You rock. Thank you so much for being awesome. Well, guys, you take care, stay safe, and we will see you in the next NSX or NX Driver's Therapy or next GTR video or next S800 video or next GT4 video. So many GTs. All right, guys, you take care. We'll talk to you soon.